You see how the men's shirt fronts and the bow ties, how they glow more than the women's dresses?
Yes.
Do you know why?
Why?
Tide.
The washing powder.
The fluorescence in the washing powder is caught by the UV light.
Why do you know that?
When stars are born and when they die, they emit UV radiation. So if we could see the night sky in the ultraviolet light, then almost all the stars would disappear, and all that we would see are these spectacular births and deaths.
The film requires a remarkable physical transformation for you. What did you do to prepare to play Hawking?
Do you know what? The physical side of it was perhaps the most intimidating side of it, and so I spent 6-7 months meeting people with motor neuron disease, ALS, in London, seeing how the disease manifests itself, which it does differently in different people, and then taking basically photographs of Hawking when he was young and showing it to specialists and showing the photos to specialists and seeing what they thought his decline would have been, and then playing with that and working with that, because what was important to me is, although the physical side of the film is of his decline is important, is when I was there working with Felicity, I wanted it just to be about the emotional side. So I did try to do some prep in order to embed that, so that when I was there with her, it was just interacting, really.
Yeah, and Jane is a huge part of this movie. So how did you build that sort of trust and communication with Felicity, your co-star?
Well, I've known Fliss for years. We come from a similar kind of theatre background in England. I adore her. I think she's sensational, and I think her part in this film was incredibly difficult, because Jane is an extraordinary mixture of like strength and fragility, and she is not melodramatic. She has everything with poise, and how the minutiae and the detail with which Felicity depicted that was mind-blowing. But it was and it was also tricky, because every day I would turn up on set and be like, I can't move from here. So she would have to do all the hard work, I mean the legwork, and that was what it kind of reflected in some ways, the relationship between Jane and Stephen.
Right, and so how did your view of Hawking change before doing the movie and over the course of inhabiting the role?
Well, I was embarrassingly ignorant about Stephen's work and life before, so it was pretty much from the word go, it was quite a revelation. What I love and remain hugely in admiration of is his optimism, is the fact that, you know, people, this crippling disease, he will describe how actually, yeah, it was horrific, but it also managed that time, the fact that he couldn't teach so much, so he wasn't made to teach so much, which meant he could do more of his own work. He would always find the optimistic trait rather than the pessimistic one, and that was, for me, hugely inspiring.
And so along with that optimism, what else are you hoping people are going to take away from the film once they've seen it?
Well, I suppose just like his character. This man is deeply humorous, like witty, naughty, complicated, at moments difficult, but also that this love story which he had with Jane, a formidable character and a formidable human being, was complicated. It's not sugar-coated, it's not... they were thrown obstacles and they managed to negotiate them, and I describe it as a film that sort of has a happy ending but without a Hollywood ending. It's a sort of very unconventional love story.
Great, and one final thing. I understand that you're friends with Benedict Cumberbatch,
Indeed.
who himself has played the role.
He has.
Did you actually speak with him at all when you were preparing?
We texted a lot, because he was playing Alan Turing at the same time. So we were both shooting. I remember when I met Stephen, Stephen and the nurses were talking about Ben. When I was shooting in Cambridge and doing some research around Cambridge, I saw this Alan Turing plaque there. So we were sort of texting each other. And there was one day when I was going on to do a scene, and we were shooting at Harrow School, which is the school that Benedict went to. And there was literally, as I was about to go in, they were calling action, and I saw Ben's name scored, and I was like, took a selfie with it. I was like, Ben, you're haunting me, dude. You're haunting me. But no, I haven't actually ever seen his and Philip Martin's version, only because I knew that I'd probably try and steal the best bits. But I will do once this is all sort of over.
The film, the byline says it's a biopic about Stephen Hawking, but it is very much about Jane Wilde as well. What about her makes her this integral and fascinating figure in her own right?
Well, I just think her extraordinary strength and her capacity for love, that that when I met Jane and started to inhabit her character, I just realized day after day just how much strength this woman had. You know, she is a real survivor. They both are. They're both courageous people. And
so you did spend some time with the real Jane Wilde in order to prepare for the role. What did she tell you in order to help you get better at playing her?
It was never anything specific. It was about spending time with her and trying to understand her motivations and who she was. And she answered the door. I went round for dinner, and she was this very sort of sprightly, petite, very friendly, warm woman. And she was just so giving. She gave clothes that she said, you know, you can use these in the film. These were when I was dating Stephen, this amazing long sort of 70s coat. And then showed us pictures of them when they first met, you know, just totally supportive.
And speaking of that word, you and Eddie have to support each other a lot in this film. How did you establish that trust between actors in order to get the best out of both of your work?
I don't know if it's not something you can establish. I think it was just an instinctive thing. I think from the audition, when it was just Eddie and James and I in the room, there was just a trust. It was already there. It was immediate.
Okay, and what is it, once people have seen The Theory of Everything, what are you hoping they'll take away from it?
I hope that they're moved by it, but also that, you know, we wanted to convey Jane and Stephen's humour, because they're both really funny. They have really dry senses of humour, so we wanted them to be fully human. When you're working with director James Marsh, how did you know that you were in good hands there? Because James is just giving. At the very beginning, he said, whatever you guys need to do what you need to do, then I will support that. And he's a very unjudgmental filmmaker. You know, he lets you get on with it, which I think was really good for Eddie and I, because we work in similar ways. We like doing lots of takes, and we try things out, and James let us do that. What do you do in order to heighten the story or make it watchable to viewers?
I hope it is watchable to viewers. Well, firstly, there's a script which I was sent, and I like very much. Anthony McCartan's sort of perspective was so interesting. He'd taken Jane Hawkins' point of view on Stephen as his starting point. And so the dramatic structure of the script was already really strong. Then your job becomes to make it all believable in front of camera, not least by working with the actors. And Eddie's preparation was so intense and exhaustive and detailed, as was Felicity's in a different way. So this kind of film works if the details are right, I think, because the emotions were so well written by Anthony, so well organised by Anthony in the structure. So my job became to make sure the details of performance and background and camera work were all what they should be for a film of this type. Yeah, and Eddie and Felicity are both terrific in the film. How did you know they were right for their respective parts? You never know, but you can only cast based on instinct and your feeling about the actor and what they've done and what they might offer. When I met Eddie and Felicity separately, I totally was convinced that they needed to be cast in the film, no question. Eddie has a nice physical resemblance to the young Stephen Hawking when he's able-bodied, and Eddie was so passionate about doing this. He saw what the responsibility was and how big that responsibility was and how much work would have to be done to make the disability in various forms, 4 or 5 different stages of it, available to me every day. And that was his great achievement technically in preparation, but more importantly, the achievement of the performance is making the emotional life of that character projected out of diminished physical circumstances so available to the audience. And Felicity too, in working off that, has to match that every step of the way. Yes, and I was speaking with Felicity. She met with the real Jane Wilde for a little research. Who from this story were you in contact with in order to get the details just right? Well, I also spent time with Jane and went around Cambridge with her to find out, where was meaningful to her in that city. Went to the first house they lived in, which we then modelled our first, the married house, on that house where she lived with Stephen. That was very beneficial. I met with Stephen too, and we got his blessing for the film, and we showed it to him after it was done and got his blessing again, and he offered me his voice to use in the film, which we weren't using at the time. We were using this sort of version of his voice, but he said, we'll use the real voice. And that felt to me like a gift that meant something, and also changed the film in a very interesting way. It's his voice you're hearing in the story.
Great, and so once people have actually seen The Theory of Everything, what are you hoping they'll take away from it?
Well, I'm not sure I want to predetermine that. You make a film and it's not really finished until the audience has seen it and completed it for themselves. You wouldn't want to kind of predict what that is, but I do think that if you can respond to this love story, which is an incredible love story, then the film will work for you in some way, I hope.
He has pneumonia. The only way he will survive would be to give him a tracheotomy. He will never speak again.
Yes, he will.
My name is Stephen Hawking.
It's American.
Is that a problem?
It has been a great joy to watch this man defy every expectation, both scientific and personal.
There should be no boundary to human endeavor. However bad life may seem, while there is life, there is hope.
Thank you.
Sorry, did you say something?
I said, thank you.